The wind screams across the steppe, 40 below zero. Snow stacks sideways. A modern camper wouldn't last a single night out here. Yet 30,000 years ago, families did. With babies, with elders, with no central heating. So how did they sleep without freezing to death? I'm Bob, the historian who digs up what your textbooks forgot. And this is Beyond Known History. Tonight, we step inside a real Ice Age winter home. Not a movie cave, a human-made machine for warmth. Picture this. Floors dug down, stealing steady heat from the earth. Walls layered like a high-end jacket, fur and hides trapping warmth, grasses and moss wicking away moisture, reed and bark mats blocking the wind while letting vapor escape. Overhead, a frame of curved tusks and skulls, stitched tight with sinew. Outside, it's brutal. Inside, the math favors you. The fire, not stacks of wood you don't have. It's prepared grasses, dung, even bone, burned hot and slow across multiple hearths, spreading heat, saving fuel. And here's the secret most people miss. Airflow. Low intakes, a high vent. Natural convection keeps the air dry, smoke managed. Heat right where the sleepers are. That's how you tuck in under layered pelts and wake up warm. By the end of this episode, you'll know exactly how an Ice Age family engineered bedtime, and why parts of their design still beat ours in the cold. So here's my question for you. Would you spend a night in a mammoth bone house if I gave you the gear? Yes or no? And why? Drop it in the comments. Let's kill the movie myth. That classic image, families huddled at a cave mouth all winter, it's woefully incomplete. Archaeology tells a different story. Ice Age people built purpose-designed winter shelters, structures that would impress modern Arctic engineers. Caves? Yes, they appear in the story. But the real cold weather living happened inside engineered homes, not just rocky hollows. Here's the mindset shift. When nature tries to kill you, make nature work for you. That's exactly what Paleolithic builders did. They designed homes that harnessed ground heat, that shaped walls to block wind, that managed moisture instead of fighting it. And this wasn't some late innovation. We've got evidence of semi-subterranean dugouts as early as Kostroma, circular depressions sunk below the frost line, tapping the Earth's steady warmth, 20 to 30 degrees warmer than surface air in winter. That's free heat, by design. Later at Dolní Věstonice, the stakes rose. Winters were faced with layered insulation systems. Fur and hides trapped warm air, grasses and moss wicked away moisture. Reed and bark mats blocked the wind, while still letting vapor escape. It's basically a Gore-Tex jacket, but for a house. Even our art cues mislead us. Cave paintings loom large in documentaries, but art also lived inside these winter shelters. Portable objects, decorated tools, right where people spent their coldest months. So no. Winter equals cave isn't the headline. The headline is this: winter equals engineered habitat, a system tuned for heat, for dryness, for fuel efficiency. And next, we step into the core of that system. Earth Tech, the semi-subterranean lodge, a machine that steals warmth from the ground and refuses to give it back. Step one wasn't walls, it was depth. Paleolithic builders dug circular and oval pits, 6 to 8 feet down, 12 feet across. Because below the frost line, the soil stayed warmer, 20 to 30 degrees warmer than the winter air. That's free, stable heat on tap. They piled the excavated earth around the rim. Raised berms, curved windshields, less wind stripping heat, more mass holding it. Inside, an extended family fits snugly. 8 to 12 people, in a compact, efficient footprint. Think of it as a human-sized heat battery with a lid. This wasn't guesswork. Tool marks and soil layers prove it. Depth was deliberate, chosen for maximum thermal efficiency. The ground itself became insulation. Semi-subterranean meant less wall exposure, calmer air, and a higher baseline temperature before a single fire was lit. If digging just a few meters down could raise your indoor baseline by 10 to 15 degrees, would you live half underground for the winter? Why or why not? Next, their genius layered skin. Walls built like a modern technical jacket that breathe, block wind, and trap heat. Warmth wasn't one big wall, it was layers, each doing a different job. The same way your winter jacket has a shell, a fill, and a liner. First, the inner liner. This was the warmth trap. Closest to the living space, you'd find fur and hides, hair facing inward to hold a thin cushion of warm air. They were hung, stitched, pegged to overlap like shingles. Any gap meant a wind leak, and heat lost, no gaps allowed. Second, the middle fill. This was the buffer. Grasses, moss, straw, even bundled reeds. Springy, breathable, and clever, it slowed down air movement so heat couldn't convect away, and it wicked moisture off warm surfaces so you didn't wake up clammy in the morning. Third, the outer shell. This took the beating. Scraped hides, bark mats, woven reed panels, tough, flexible, angled so meltwater and frost slid down and away. Snow packed against it? That actually helped. Snow, kept dry and controlled, is its own insulation. Seams and skirts. They overstitched seams with sinew and laid ground skirts, extra hides or mats that ran outward, weighted with earth or snow. That stopped wind from sneaking under and stripping heat. Floors and beds. No one slept on bare ground. They built bedding platforms of brush, bone boards layered with hides and pelts. That killed conductive heat loss and kept bodies above the cold air that pooled at floor level. This composite wall system wasn't theory. It's visible at Dolny Vistonets 26,000 years ago. Fur and hides, a wicking grass and moss loft, an outer reed and bark shell. Basically, a prehistoric technical jacket, but built to live inside. Daily maintenance was survival. Every storm, you'd retension skins, repack sagging grass, check the skirts. 5 minutes of work meant hours of warmer sleep. So if you had to copy just one layer for an emergency winter shelter, inner fur, middle grass, or outer shell, which would you pick and why? Next, the frame that held all this together. Mammoth bone architecture. Yes, tusks as rafters. Forget wood cabins. On the mammoth steppe, you build with what the ice gives you. Winter houses began with planned foundations. Circular or oval depressions, 12 to 16 feet across. The excavated soil piled into berms, wind shields, and thermal mass in one. For the frame, they went heavy. Mammoth skulls, some weighing over 200 pounds, set as ground blocks. Curved tusks and long bones arched into a dome-like skeleton. Smaller bones wedged into gaps for rigidity. Brutalist engineering, with biology. At Mezhirich and Kostenki, the skulls did more than anchor walls. Some archaeologists argue their placement carried symbolic weight. Engineering blended with ritual. Inside, the domes housed 10 to 15 people, a true extended family machine for heat. But they weren't slaughtering entire herds just to build. Radiocarbon tells us many bones were already long dead, collected from boneyards, not fresh kills. Smart logistics. In a starving landscape, over the frame went a composite skin. The outer shell, thick mammoth hides, sinew sewn with bone needles, a tough, weather-shedding membrane. The inner loft, layered pelts, wolf, fox, hare, trapping warm air, boosting insulation. Anchoring was everything. The whole cover lashed to the bone frame with toggles, tight enough to resist gales, strong enough to hold snow, seams safe from tearing. The result, a compact dome, high mass, low leaks, tuned for savage wind, snow loading, and quick warm-up once the hearths lit. And these weren't cramped shacks. The footprint fit 8 to 12 people, and more bodies meant more heat. So, quick poll. Would you trust a bone and hide dome over a modern tent in a -30 windstorm? Why? Next, heat without wood, how dung, grasses, even bone, kept these homes toasty with multi-hearth efficiency. No forests? No problem, if you understand fuel physics. On the treeless steppe, winter houses ran on a multi-hearth system, a central fire to anchor the room's temperature. Smaller perimeter heaters creating task-specific warm zones. Cooking here, tool work there. Sleeping corners warmed just enough. The layout spread heat efficiently and cut fuel waste. The fuels and why they worked. Dung, from mammoth and herd animals. Sun-dried into dense bricks. Slow, steady burn. Perfect for embers without flaring smoke. Residue studies prove it. These fuels were processed to boost efficiency, not tossed in raw. Dried grasses and reeds, braided or bundled. Easy ignition. Quick bursts of heat to bring a hearth up to temperature before switching to slower fuels. And bone. Yes, bone burns. Collagen inside turns it into a long hot fuel once prepared properly. Archaeologists literally find bone fuel signatures in hearths. Run this way, a single home became a heat network. The big hearth raised the baseline. Satellite fires topped up the microclimates. Food prep here. Infants and elders warmed over there. Elegant thermodynamics, not campfire chaos. So if you had to pick one primary fuel out here, dung, grass bundles, or bone, what's your choice and why? Next, the part that keeps all this from turning into a soggy, smoky cave. Ventilation and moisture control. Low intakes, high vents, adjustable flaps, natural convection, so you wake up dry and warm. A warm house is half the game. The other half, a shelter you can wear. The breakthrough was tiny, the bone needle. With sinew thread, Ice Age tailors leveled up, from draped skins to fitted trousers, shirts, insulated boots, and hooded parkas. At Sungur burials, we even see the patterns, thousands of beads sewn onto garments, outlining the cuts like ghostly tailor's chalk. The result? Mobility at 40 below, without losing fingers or precious time. The logic mirrored the house. Inner fur for trapped warmth, middle loft for airflow control, outer shell for wind and wet. A wearable version of the composite wall. That's how you hunted, how you hauled fuel, how you lived outside the dome without burning all your calories on heat. So here's the question. If you had to copy one ancient clothing idea for modern winter work, the fur inliner, the lofted middle, or the hooded shell, which wins and why? Here's the silent killer in winter shelters. Moisture. Without airflow, steam from breathing and cooking condenses. It freezes onto cold surfaces, and suddenly, your warm shelter becomes an icebox, a place you can't sleep in. Ice Age builders solved it with designed airflow. At sites like Kostenki, you see the pattern. Small, low openings pulling in fresh air, larger, high vents releasing warm, moisture-heavy air. That sets up a natural convection loop. Air stays breathable. Heat stays where people actually live. And it wasn't fixed, they made it adjustable. Bone and hide flaps that opened and closed depending on storms, temperature, and need. That's not primitive, that's tunable HVAC with Stone Age materials. Pair it with the multi-hearth layout we covered earlier, a central fire plus smaller warm zones, and smoke or moisture don't pool. They move, slowly, predictably, along the path you designed. The result? Dry bedding, warmer skins, better sleep. So here's a check for you. If you had to cut one vent, only one, would you lose the low intake or the high exhaust? And why? Next, inside the winter home. Who slept where tools lived, and how food stayed fresh. Hint, permafrost pantries connected by short tunnels. Picture the room map. Sleeping ring closest to the central hearth. Warmest spots reserved for infants and elders. Activity pockets radiating outward. Tool making sat near the secondary hearths. Light was good there. Hands stayed warm enough for fine work. This wasn't random. It was a plan for comfort, for survival. Food didn't just sit in a corner. In permafrost regions, families dug underground storage chambers, short tunnels leading to natural freezers. Meat stayed accessible, even in blizzards. Think of it as a pantry you crawl to. These homes evolved with the season. Built in late summer, early autumn, then maintained all winter. Bones swapped, hides patched, insulation refreshed. Performance improved as the storms stacked up. Survival wasn't a one-time build, it was a maintenance routine, and the mind mattered too. Months indoors could crack morale, so spaces for art and ritual were built in. Figurines, decorated tools, portable art, creative expression kept people sane and bonded through the long dark. That long dark wasn't wasted time. Venus figurines were carved, tools were decorated, and an unwritten library of knowledge was passed down. How to sight vents, how to stitch seams, how to stock fuel, because one mistake in build or planning could be fatal. When winter finally broke, they didn't abandon the tech. They dismantled smartly, caching valuables, leaving heavy frames secured, migrating with the portable kit. Thermally, these shelters delivered, 40 to 50 degrees warmer inside than the outside air, on modest fires. That's engineering. Now your turn. If you lived here for 3 months, which feature would you fight to keep perfect? The storage tunnel, the infant and elder warm zone, or the secondary hearth workspace? And why? Next, what we lost, and what modern survival still borrows from Ice Age house design. The principle we forgot is simple. Don't fight winter, harness it. Ice Age builders tuned every choice, materials, shapes, heat, airflow to the physics of cold, wind, and snow. And it's still worth stealing today. Ground heat equals free warmth. Go semi-subterranean or earth-bermed. Below the frost line, soil stays 20 to 30 degrees warmer than the air. That lifts your indoor baseline before you ever light a fire. Layered walls like a jacket, inner fur or pelt to trap warm air, springy grass or moss to slow convection, outer reed, bark, or hide to block wind while letting vapor out. Function-specific layers, like a technical parka. Multi-hearth, multi-zone heat. One central fire sets the room temperature. Smaller satellites warm cooking spots, toolwork areas, sleeping zones. Even heat. Less fuel. Alternative fuels that behave. Dung bricks for steady embers. Braided grasses for fast ignition. Bone for long, hot burns. Prepared fuels, never tossed in raw. Vent that moisture or freeze. Low intakes plus high exhausts. Natural convection. Air stays breathable. Bedding stays dry. Modern Arctic engineers still treat ventilation as mission critical. Cold storage that works. Permafrost pantries. Linked by short tunnels. Meat stayed safe and accessible through blizzards. Nature's freezer. No electricity required. Maintenance culture. Homes built in late summer, early autumn. Upgraded all winter. Hides patched. Loft refreshed. Bones swapped. Performance improved as storms stacked up, and it's no relic. Modern Arctic engineers, even military survival programs, study reconstructions of these designs. We're literally relearning Ice Age playbooks. What we lost: patience for material knowledge, sinew seams, hide tension, daily tuning of vents and skirts. What we kept when we're smart: earth sheltering, layered envelopes, zoned heating, and ruthless moisture control. The bones of passive survival, dressed in modern gear. Now your turn. If you could copy just one Ice Age idea for a modern off-grid cabin, the earth-bermed floor, the layered wall system, or the low-in, high-out vents, which wins and why?